Mary, the Mother of God, stands as the most profound embodiment of suffering, humility, obedience, and love that the world has ever known. Her story is not one of comfort but of quiet agony, of love so fierce it could only be forged in the deepest surrender. When the angel Gabriel appeared to her, a young, poor girl from an obscure village, he did not offer her safety or ease. He offered her a cross. "Be it done unto me according to your word," she replied, knowing that this yes would cost her everything. It was not a passive acceptance but an act of radical courage. In that single moment of surrender, Mary bore the weight of God's plan for salvation, stepping into a life of profound joy and unspeakable sorrow. She carried within her womb the Savior of the world, knowing that this child, flesh of her flesh, would walk a path of suffering and rejection. Yet still, she said yes. Mary's obedience was not a fleeting act but a lifelong journey through shadows most of us would flee from. She endured whispers of scandal and the suspicion of neighbors. She fled to Egypt with her infant son, becoming a refugee, clutching the fragile promise of God in foreign lands. She raised Jesus, watching him grow, teach, and love, all the while carrying the terrible knowledge foretold by Simeon, that a sword would pierce her own soul. And on Golgotha, that prophecy was fulfilled. She stood at the foot of the cross, watching her son, her God, bleed and suffocate, mocked and abandoned. Imagine the pain of a mother witnessing the slow, brutal execution of her child, powerless to intervene. Yet Mary did not turn away. She did not curse God or demand answers. She stood silent, steadfast, holding her agony within, trusting still in the goodness of the God who allowed this horror. This is the depth of her love, the measure of her obedience. She loved without condition, she obeyed without hesitation, and she suffered without bitterness. Mary is loved not because her life was easy, but because her love was costly. She is loved because her heart was wide enough to hold both unbearable sorrow and unwavering faith. She is loved because she lived not for herself but entirely for God's will. And this is where every Christian must be challenged. We admire Mary, but do we dare to follow her example? Are we willing to say yes to God when it costs us our comfort, our pride, our control? Are we prepared to bear the crosses He hands us without complaint, trusting that His purposes are higher than our understanding? Mary teaches us that true discipleship is not glamorous, it is often lonely, painful, and misunderstood. It is standing firm when the world crumbles around you. It is loving when your heart is breaking. It is obeying when the road ahead is dark and uncertain. Her life demands that we stop offering God our half-hearted obedience and instead surrender everything, our plans, our reputations, our very lives. If we truly honor Mary, we must not merely admire her from a distance. We must let her example sear into our souls, breaking down every barrier of pride and fear that keeps us from radical surrender. We must learn to trust God in our own suffering, to love when it is hardest, and to obey when it costs us everything. Mary's life is a mirror held up to every Christian, reflecting back the uncomfortable truth that love without sacrifice is shallow, and faith without surrender is empty. She challenges us to step beyond comfortable religion and into the raw, unrelenting obedience that transforms hearts and changes the world. Let us not simply praise her, let us dare to follow her. Let us echo her cry, "Be it done unto me according to your word," no matter what it demands. And in doing so, may we, like Mary, become vessels of God's relentless love in a world so desperate for redemption.